I had always prided myself on being a man of reason. As a software engineer, everything in my life seemed like a complex algorithm that could be solved with logic. My career in San Francisco was on an upward trajectory, and I had a wife who was, without question, the most important part of my life. Megan. She was the warmth in my otherwise structured world. But that night everything changed. I was staying in a hotel room halfway around the world on a business trip. My phone buzzed on the bedside table, interrupting my thoughts. It was a message from Megan. I smiled, reaching for the phone, eager to hear from her. She had always been so sweet with her texts, always saying things like, "I miss you," or "Can't wait to see you when you're home." But this time the message was different. It read, "Good night, love. Can't wait to see you tomorrow." At first I thought nothing of it. Megan had been acting a little distant lately, but I brushed it off. She had been working late, spending more time at the office, and I assumed it was just the stress of her job. But something about the way she phrased that message, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow," it struck me as odd. Megan was always careful with her words. And this just felt off. She had never spoken to me like that before. I stared at the screen, the words becoming blurry as I tried to make sense of them. Maybe it was nothing, just a mistake. I told myself to relax. But the more I thought about it, the more a creeping sense of unease gnawed at me. Something was wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling. Was it just me being paranoid, or was there something more to it? The truth is, I had started to notice subtle changes in Megan. Little things. She was more secretive, more distant. She'd come home later than usual, sometimes without even mentioning where she'd been. And when I called her while I was traveling, her responses were short, distracted. It wasn't like her. She had always been the one to fill the silence with stories of her day, to ask me about mine, to check in with me even when we were miles apart. But not anymore. I tried to brush it off. After all, I had been away a lot, and maybe I was just being too sensitive. I'd always been a bit of a worrier, and I didn't want to jump to conclusions. But that message, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow," had sparked something inside me that I couldn't ignore. It was like a door had opened in my mind, and now I couldn't stop wondering what lay beyond it. The next few days passed in a blur of meetings and deadlines. Every time I looked at my phone, I kept thinking about that message. It lingered in my mind like a shadow, casting doubt on everything. I had to push those thoughts aside, focusing on my work, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. I didn't want to admit it, but I could feel the distance between Megan and me growing. And I hated it. When I finally returned home, that feeling of unease still clung to me. I told myself I was overreacting, but I couldn't shake the nagging doubt. I needed to know what was really going on. The truth, no matter how painful, was something I couldn't ignore. I told myself that whatever I found, I would deal with it, but I had to know for sure. As soon as I stepped through the door of our house, I noticed how quiet everything was. Megan wasn't home yet. The silence felt heavy, like it was waiting for something. I stood there for a moment, uncertain of what to do next. But then something caught my eye. Megan's phone was lying on the kitchen counter, unlocked, screen facing up. I hesitated, a rush of guilt washing over me. Should I? Shouldn't I? But the curiosity, the desperate need to understand what was happening, pushed me forward. I reached for the phone, my hands trembling slightly. For a moment, I wondered if I was crossing a line, but my need for answers overpowered my hesitation. I unlocked the phone, and what I saw next made my heart skip a beat. It was a string of messages between Megan and William. William, her colleague, the one I had met a few times at social events. They'd always seemed friendly, but nothing more than that. I had never suspected anything. But now, as I read their conversation, the truth hit me like a cold slap. It was clear. Megan and William were having an affair. I stared at the screen, the words blurring in front of my eyes. My mind raced. I felt like I was suffocating. How had I not seen this? How could Megan, the woman I had trusted with everything, betray me like this? I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know how to feel. But one thing was certain. I had to confront the truth. And in that moment, I knew there was no going back. The weight of the discovery pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. I couldn't breathe. My mind was in a frenzy, racing through 1,000 thoughts at once. The betrayal. The lies. The questions that would now haunt me for as long as I lived. I stood there, holding Megan's phone in my hand, staring at the incriminating messages. They were casual, almost playful, as if nothing was wrong, as if they weren't betraying everything that had once been sacred between us. I set the phone down on the kitchen counter with a shaking hand. My chest felt tight, my heart pounding in my ears. I had to take a breath. I had to think. But how could I? My entire world had just been ripped apart, and I didn't know what to do next. I felt like I was living in someone else's nightmare. Megan would be home soon. I knew I couldn't confront her right away. Not yet. I needed time to process what I had just learned. But time was the one thing I didn't have. The reality of the situation kept crashing into me over and over again. I had trusted her. I had loved her. And now everything was shattered. I walked aimlessly around the house trying to find something to anchor me, but nothing felt familiar anymore. The furniture, the walls, the pictures, everything felt like a lie. Even the smell of the house seemed wrong, as though it was tainted by the deceit that had unfolded here. I thought back to the last few months trying to piece together when things had started to change. Megan had been distant, yes, but I had chalked it up to her demanding job. She had been working late, staying at the office more often, but it wasn't like her to avoid me entirely. I had convinced myself that it was all in my head. I hadn't wanted to believe the truth. And now I wished I hadn't ignored the signs. I sat down on the couch, staring blankly at the wall. There was so much I didn't understand. How had it come to this? How could Megan have betrayed me so completely? And why William? He was always so pleasant, so professional. I never imagined he could be the one to tear apart my life. A loud sound startled me. It was the front door opening. Megan had arrived home. My heart skipped a beat and I froze. This was it. The moment of truth. I heard her footsteps as she moved through the hallway, and then she appeared in the doorway, smiling as usual. "Hey, Robert," she said, her voice light, almost too light. I noticed the way she was looking at me, her eyes not quite meeting mine. It was subtle, but it was there, the shift in her demeanor. Something wasn't right. "Hey," I said, my voice tight. I stood up, forcing myself to meet her gaze. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us felt suffocating, heavy with unspoken words. "How was your trip?" she asked, moving toward the kitchen. "Fine," I replied, my voice betraying me. I couldn't bring myself to ask her the questions burning in my mind. I couldn't confront her right away. Not yet. But I knew I had to. She opened the refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of water. Her back was to me, but I could feel her unease, the way her body was tense as if she knew something was wrong. I wanted to scream at her, to demand the truth right there. But I couldn't. I needed more time to think, to figure out what to do next. "Are you okay?" she asked, turning to face me, her brow furrowed in concern. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I was. The truth was, I wasn't sure about anything anymore. Everything I had believed in, everything I had built with Megan was now in question. I had to confront her, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. "Yeah," I said softly. "Just tired, I guess." Megan nodded, still watching me closely. "I know things have been a bit off lately. Work's been crazy, but we'll figure it out. We always do. We always do." The words stung. How could she say that when everything was falling apart? I wanted to shout at her, to tell her that nothing would ever be the same again, but I didn't. Instead, I forced a smile, hoping she couldn't see the storm brewing inside me. She smiled back, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm glad you're home," she said quietly. I watched her for a moment, wondering if she could sense the change in me. Could she tell that I knew? Did she feel the distance between us, the invisible thread that had snapped and left us both hanging? I had to act. I couldn't keep living in this lie. I had to confront her, had to get the truth out in the open. But how? How could I confront her with what I knew without losing everything? My hands trembled slightly as I thought about it. The weight of the decision, of the truth, was crushing. Megan took a step closer, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Robert, what's going on? You're acting strange." I looked at her, trying to steady my breath, trying to find the right words. But all I could think of was the cold, hard truth. And I knew then that I couldn't keep running from it. Not anymore. I couldn't keep the secret any longer. The weight of it was unbearable, and as Megan stood in front of me, her hand on my shoulder, I realized that I was suffocating under the pretense of everything being okay. I had to say something. I had to confront her, even if it meant breaking everything wide open. "Megan," I started, my voice sounding more strained than I intended. She looked up at me, concern still etched on her face. She probably thought it was just another passing moment of stress, nothing to worry about. But she had no idea what was about to hit her. I know about you and William," I said, the words leaving my mouth before I could stop them. My throat was dry, and I could feel the sting of the accusation hanging in the air between us, palpable and sharp. Megan froze. For a moment she didn't move, didn't speak. Her hand dropped from my shoulder and she took a small step back. Her eyes darted to the side, and I could tell she was trying to process what I had just said. The silence was deafening. "What do you mean?" she finally asked, her voice sounding strained. She was trying to act calm, trying to keep the facade intact, but I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. She was caught. I saw the messages, I said flatly, my heart pounding in my chest. I saw everything on your phone, Megan. The texts, the plans, the little exchanges you and William have been having. Her face paled. She opened her mouth to speak but closed it again. She looked like she was searching for the right words, but there were no right words. There was nothing she could say to make this okay, nothing that could fix what had been broken. Megan, I said, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. How could you? How long has this been going on? She looked down at her feet, avoiding my gaze. For a long time she didn't say anything. I could feel the betrayal swirling between us, thick and suffocating, like smoke filling a room until there was no air left to breathe. I never meant for it to happen, she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. It just happened. I wanted to scream. It just happened? I repeated, incredulous. Do you think I'm stupid? You think I'll believe that? You've been lying to me, Megan. For how long? She looked up at me then, her eyes filled with something I couldn't place. Guilt, shame, maybe even regret. But it was too late for apologies. Too late for excuses. I'm sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I never wanted to hurt you. But I've been so unhappy, Robert. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to fix it. Unhappy? Was that really the excuse she was giving me? My mind was reeling, my thoughts a whirlwind of emotions I couldn't control. I felt numb, detached from the situation, as if I were watching someone else's life unfold in front of me. Unhappy? I repeated, my voice dangerously low. And this was how you fixed it? You went behind my back, you betrayed me with him? Megan's face crumpled and she began to cry, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I never meant for it to go this far, but I felt so lost. I needed someone to listen. William, he was there for me when you weren't. I felt a rush of nausea. When I wasn't? I spat. I've been working my ass off for us, for this life we built, and you? I choked on my words, struggling to keep my composure. You thought he was better than me? He was just a replacement, wasn't he? Someone who could fill the emptiness you felt because I was gone. She shook her head, her sobs uncontrollable. No, Robert. That's not it. I never wanted to hurt you. I felt alone. I don't know what happened. I don't know how it all went wrong. Alone. The word echoed in my mind like a sick joke. She had never been alone. We had always been together, hadn't we? But now, in the wake of her betrayal, I realized how truly alone I felt. She had betrayed me, and in that betrayal, she had taken something from me I could never get back. I stepped back from her, needing space, needing distance from the woman I had trusted with everything. I can't do this, Megan. I can't live in this lie. I can't pretend that everything is fine when you've broken everything between us. I turned and walked toward the door, not looking back. I knew that if I stayed in that room, I might never be able to leave. But I couldn't stay in the same space as the woman who had destroyed me. Robert, please, she called after me, her voice desperate. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. Please don't leave me. But it was too late. I had already made up my mind. There was no going back. I had to leave, to get away from the chaos she had dragged me into. As I stepped out into the cold night air, I felt the weight of everything settling on me like a blanket of lead. I had to end it. There was no other choice. I wasn't sure what would come next, but I knew that I couldn't keep living in this shattered version of my life. The air outside was crisp and I welcomed it, though it did little to numb the ache in my chest. The night was dark, but there was something freeing about being out in it, away from the suffocating weight of the life I had shared with Megan. My mind was reeling, and every step I took felt like a small victory. I had walked away from her, from the lies, from the brokenness. But even as I felt the relief, I also felt a deep sadness. This was not the way I had imagined my life turning out. Divorce was never on my radar. But now it was the only way forward. I didn't go far that night. I needed space, but I also needed answers. I found myself sitting in my car in the parking lot of a small cafe, the city lights casting long shadows across the pavement. My hands were still trembling, but I knew I couldn't delay the inevitable. I had to start making calls, begin the process of untangling my life from hers. The first call I made was to my lawyer. I had known for a while that this day might come, but I had never wanted to face it. Now, with my heart aching and my hands shaking, I knew I had no choice. Robert, I'm sorry to hear about your situation, my lawyer, Craig, said when I explained everything. But we'll get this sorted. It's going to be tough, but you're doing the right thing. You don't deserve to live in a relationship built on betrayal. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. The words felt hollow, as though they were meant to comfort me, but nothing could fix what had been broken. I just want to get it over with, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I want out. I can't do this anymore. Understood, Craig replied. We'll file the paperwork and get started. It won't be quick, but we'll make sure you get the best outcome. I hung up the phone and sat there for a moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on me once more. What was happening? The divorce. The end of everything I had worked for, everything I had thought was a solid foundation. But the more I thought about it, the more I knew it was the only way forward. Megan's betrayal had changed everything. It had shattered the trust between us, and without trust there was nothing left. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork, meetings, and difficult conversations. Megan and I barely spoke. The few times we did, it was always strained. Her apologies were endless, but they didn't make a difference. I couldn't forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. There was a strange sense of finality in signing the divorce papers. When it was all over, when everything was officially ended, I sat in my lawyer's office for a long time, staring at the papers in front of me. I had never imagined my life would be like this. My marriage, once so full of love and possibility, now felt like a distant memory. It was gone and there was no bringing it back. But in that moment I also realized something. I had survived. I had gotten through the worst part. And now I could start over. I could rebuild my life. I could learn how to trust again, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. I took a deep breath and stood up from the chair. The road ahead would be long, but I knew it would be worth it. I had friends and family who cared about me, who would be there for me as I moved forward. I wasn't alone, even though it felt that way sometimes. The first thing I did after the divorce was finalize my work projects, trying to throw myself back into my career. I was good at what I did. It was one area of my life that hadn't been tainted by betrayal, and I clung to it with everything I had. I started spending more time with friends, rediscovering old hobbies I had neglected. I even reconnected with my family, who had been supportive from the beginning. But the most important thing I did was learn to be alone. For the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about Megan, about her whereabouts, her lies, her secrets. I could breathe again. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that I deserved more than what I had settled for. I deserved honesty. I deserved loyalty. I deserved love without strings attached. Every day felt like a small victory. Some days were harder than others, but I knew I was getting stronger. The pain of the betrayal would never fully disappear, but I was learning to live with it, to move forward in spite of it. One day, about 6 months after the divorce, I found myself sitting in a cafe, sipping a cup of coffee and watching people go by. I realized then that I was okay. I had come out of the darkness and into the light. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready to try again. But not yet. Not until I was truly ready. For now, I was content with my own company, knowing that I was rebuilding myself, piece by piece. And that, for the first time in a long while, felt like enough.